All right, nerds, this is called That Just Happened. This week, the things that happened are No One Will Save You was released. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some Ahsoka action because I've seen everything but the most recent episode, as well as GenV launched the first 3 episodes of their first season, and a couple other things we're going to get into as well. Okay, so real quick about the show. This is kind of a review show and more just I finally got around to doing a thing, so let's talk about it and keep the conversation going, because the main show that we do here is a news show, and once the news cycle ends on a certain thing, kind of leaves the popular consciousness, and I feel like that's a disservice to the good things out there, the good music and the good movies and the good TV shows and so on and so forth. So this is my way of working around that. And also I'm a one-man production unit, so it's really difficult for me to catch certain things when they're brand new. Some things I thoroughly enjoy and I chomp at the bit to catch them brand new. Specifically, I'm talking about The Walking Dead and Ahsoka and things of that nature, Mortal Kombat. But other things, like some movies, I will get around to it eventually, and yeah. So it's whenever that happens, that's what fills up this show. So let's start this week off with Ahsoka, because this one is pretty divisive, I feel like. Episode 7 was the last episode I watched, so that means there's one more episode, I believe, that came out this week, or maybe I actually caught the newest episode actually when it came out. I can't remember. I apologize. Either way, there's one more episode that I haven't watched. Whether or not it's released yet, I feel like is fairly irrelevant to today's conversation. So, Ahsoka episodes 6 and 7 were what I watched this weekend. And was it? It was Tuesday. It was yesterday. So maybe hung up on it. I apologize. Episode 7, 3PO. At the beginning of the episode, super stoked about that. I saw a pretty critical review of episode 7, talking about how that's really just a lot of shell game, kind of misdirection, in order to misdirect you away from the fact that it was kind of a dumb episode. I feel like there's definitely been moments for this whole season that are like, oh my God, this did not have to happen. But overall, this is still some of the best Star Wars we've gotten in a long time. Better than I would put this season of Ahsoka over pretty much everything else Disney has done, minus Rogue One and seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian. Yeah, I would at this point even put this over the Force Awakens, because I think this by far outperforms Force Awakens. There were a couple of pretty valid points in that very critical review, like some of the tactical decisions that Thrawn made in this episode. He's supposed to be this big strategic genius, and he's supposed to be the guy that can see 17 moves ahead on the chessboard and so on and so forth. But he just made some really redundant choices in this in episode 7. And specifically, I'm talking about when Ahsoka was in the debris field and he called off his fighters, and then like 2 scenes later, he sends in people to flush her out of the debris field. That just seems rather unnecessary, because he knows that she's going to find Sabine Wren. He has a fair idea of where Sabine Wren is, so like you could just monitor that, or just monitor the debris field roughly where you know where Ahsoka is, and then follow. Like, there's so many other more logical ways to have approached what happened in that episode that, yeah, I can see why somebody who really wants to be critical of these things can be critical of these things in a very negative way. But there is a certain Patton Oswalt calls it a buy, but traditionally it's referred to as suspension of disbelief. When you're into a story, when you're into something fantastical, like there's certain things that you kind of just acquiesce to the story. And Thrawn being an incredible military genius is something that you kind of have to acquiesce in spite of some of the actions, because a lot of action, a lot of the things that happen are just to further the story. Yes, I understand that is very, very probably, it is a sign of a poor writer, but that is not a sign of poor entertainment, if that makes sense. You're still along for the ride. You're still here for the action. You're still here to enjoy yourself, and I feel like it does that very well. Another point that was brought up was, why did Thrawn not order the troopers to kill Sabine and Ezra Bridger as soon as they found them? That would definitely flush out. Again, it's a little bit of plot armor, because you can't kill two of your main characters, especially in the first season, if you want multiple seasons to happen, and especially two big fan favorite characters. So, like, yes, again, tactical error, but more tactical on the writers, hang that one over the writer's head necessarily than over the show, because the show is, by and large, doing good things for Star Wars. So these probably weren't the most exciting 2 episodes. I do love the Purgills. I do really love the incredible scale of these space whales is just really a cool visual element of this. It was really strange having episode 6 have like 3 minutes of Ahsoka in it, being as this is an Ahsoka show. But there were some rumors around these episodes before they aired that was going to happen. So there was a little bit of anticipation of that. I still put this over for entertainment value and for the positive things that it's doing for the Star Wars franchise. I still put this over almost everything else that Disney has done as far as Star Wars is concerned. So this is still quality stuff. Episode 7, one of the less than greatly written episodes. Episode 6, even a little bit of a foot draggy stuff, but methodical. We talked about this last time we talked about Ahsoka. I like a Star Wars story to be methodical, to be a little bit slower and drawn out. I think that's how Star Wars really thrives, because it gives a little bit of air, a little bit of room to breathe. I feel like they're losing a little bit of that allure with episodes 6 and 7, not really accomplishing a whole hell of a lot, especially episode 6, because obviously episode 7 is the reunion of Sabine and Ahsoka and Ezra Bridger, so that's significant, but it just kind of felt unearned in a certain way. So if you put episode 4, we'll say episode 4 is like an A-, right? Episodes 6 and 7, we're looking at probably a C, solid C, but a C nonetheless. Yeah, that's where we're at with Ahsoka. Let's talk about, I got movies next, but I totally didn't put in Walking Dead, and I don't know why, but let's talk about Walking Dead. Daryl Dixon, real quick. I believe it was episode 8. It was either 7 or 8. Because it's not in the notes, I don't know exactly the number, but it's the episode where, they lose the kid, and then the kid goes to the Eiffel Tower, and just some really, I'm not the most eloquent when it comes to on the fly kind of discussing a thing necessarily, but Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon is, I would put this at the same level of Walking Dead at its height. So you're looking at Walking Dead like season 8 and 9 roughly being like the prime seasons of the mainline series. I would say what we've got so far this season from Daryl Dixon is right up there with those. By comparison, the Dead City stuff, not quite as good. I would say that's more season like 3 or so. of the mainline. Still good, just not great. I think the Daryl Dixon stuff is pretty freaking great. You without giving away too much, they do good with making tertiary characters not feel tertiary until they meet their demise. Like you think that there's potential for any of these characters to become part of the main plot, and then when they start to die off, like you really feel the impact of that. And yeah, I think that's a hell of a way to tell a story, especially a story in this universe. Very effective. I'm really digging The Walking Dead right now, the Daryl Dixon show. I feel like that should be obvious though, because I just like The Walking Dead in general. And then the other TV show thing, and then we'll get to the movies, is GenV. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 have launched over on Amazon Prime, and I watched them. And so the great thing about the Boys franchise, the Garth Ennis created The Boys franchise, is that, you know, Garth Ennis is one that really is a good brain for deconstructing the superhero mythology. He does really good with grounding it into reality that seems more feasible. Specifically what I'm talking about is the way people with superpowers interact with what is perceivably the quote-unquote real world, or what would the real world become if such people existed. So The Boys does that well, and there's still a whole hell of a lot of humor in the mainline series of The Boys. So I think that helps to kind of drive home the point a little bit in certain ways, because they can make a very heavy because they can make a very heavy statement, as long as there's a certain level of comedy around that heavy statement. It's easier to digest for the average viewer. In GenV, at least in the first episode, and kind of a bit in the second episode, but maybe not as much. It starts getting pretty heavy around about the second episode, but in the first episode, it seems like they're leaning a little too hard on the humor elements, and very much too hard on the sex elements of this property. I understand that is a significant portion of that, because if you're going to show despicable people being despicable, and one of the ways that you can do that quickly is through sex-related things, then that makes sense that it becomes a part of the storytelling, as far as you want to make these people with superpowers who are perceived by the masses as being these great people really aren't great people. Then that's a very quick and easy way to do that. And in GenV, you're talking about college kids, so again, sex is probably going to be a very big element of the storytelling, because college kids, it's kind of one of the tropes of being a college kid, right? Just seems like they're too quick to make the dick joke, and not quick enough to ruminate on the deeper messaging that they're trying to hint at. That goes away by the end of episode 3, you're really more into the deep questions and the philosophical side of it more than anything. But I don't know, it just kind of started off a little bit on the wrong foot for episode 1 to be so much on the dick jokes. Then there's one scene in particular. It's like, really? This does very little. To spend this much time on this dick joke is unnecessary. To make the joke, to interject the philosophical elements that led to the dick joke, that makes sense. And then to have them kind of punctuate with the joke, sure, let's do that a little bit more. But you don't need to spend that much time after the joke's been made, kind of reoccurring, like bringing the joke back and back and back. That's the scene with Cricket and her hookup just went way too long. You didn't that was angering. But like the deeper philosophical elements of her character, absolutely, I feel like is a great addition to the conversation that was started with the boys as a whole to begin with. So yeah, it seems a little more meandering because I think largely because it's based on a one-off comic, if I'm remembering correctly, that was kind of ancillary to the mainline boys comic books by Garth Ennis. This was at the most, it was a mini, micro mini even, like 3 to 5 issues of a comic that they're basing this series off of. And I don't even think they're basing it as tightly off of that as the mainline live action series is based off of the comic book boys. So yeah, there's a lot more room for the showrunner to play with here. And it seems like they're not fully getting the message that Ennis was trying to portray with his original writings for the comic book. So it kind of pulls you out a little bit, but by the end of episode 3, I was definitely brought in, so I'm very much looking forward to the rest of this season. All right, so that's the TV stuff that happened this week. This week. And next up, we have some movies to talk about. First up, let's talk about No One Will Save You. We talked about the announcement of this. It's a Hulu direct horror movie. It is an alien invasion horror movie, which you find out fairly quickly, so that's not really a spoiler or anything. But this was such an interesting movie. There's a lot of unique elements to this because generally, like when we see alien invasion movies, minus M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, but even then, up until a certain point, this holds true. When you see an alien invasion movie, largely the alien creatures are viewed as, to a certain degree, like untouchable. Like be it because they have the crazy armor, like in Independence Day, or technology is usually a big one. Or they're just like an invading force that is just, you can't stop it, an unstoppable force. Like that is a perception of an alien invasion movie. This alien invasion movie really flips that on its head. It feels like, at least at first, it feels like the alien that is harassing our protagonist, if you will, feels like it's more like a teenager, like. Or I don't know, just kind of messing with its prey in a way. Like that's kind of and then something happens fairly early in the movie, towards the end of the first act, that actually it is the end of the first act. It brings you into the second act, because the second act is where things really just ramp the hell up. But the action that ends the first act is so jarring and so out of the norm for an alien invasion movie that it really hooks you in. And then when you get to the end of the movie, it's a little bit out of left field and it's a little silly, and it kind of like, we have all of this really cool buildup. We have all of this really cool rising action. And then by the time we get to the conclusion of said rising action, like it's very Deus Ex Machina, like just because we needed to end the story, this is how the story ends kind of feel. It was just a little... it's a little Stephen King. It just didn't know where to go. And so they went completely off the other end, off the deep end. So yeah, that's good movie. Like if especially if you already have a Hulu subscription, absolutely go watch this. I don't know that this is necessarily one to get a Hulu subscription for, unless you're really hardcore into horror movies, or really hardcore very specifically into alien movies, but it's pretty good. I can't say it's worth getting a Hulu subscription for in and of itself, but if you already have one, go watch it for sure. Then we have, oh god, this is when we talked at the beginning of the episode, sometimes it takes me a little while to get around to things. This is a movie that I honestly didn't really know existed, but was made in 2017, might have been 18, called American Satan. It is over on Freevee right now. It is technically a horror movie, but not really. It's a music-based movie. It's based around a metal band. It is produced, one of the production houses involved, one of the people that put up money for this, is a Sumerian Films, I think is what it was called, which is an offshoot of the Sumerian Records company, which is a record label that does very heavy music. It stars Andy Biersack and one of the guys from Andy Biersack, for those that don't know, sings for the Black Veil Brides. And then Bruce, I can't think of Bruce's last name because I didn't put it in the notes because I take amazing notes, but one of the guitar players, one of the founding members of Asking Alexandria is in it as well. And then the cat who played Samwell in the Game of Thrones, he's in here as well. He is the manager for the band. And just, the Bill Goldberg is in here because, of course, Bill Goldberg is in here. But if you watch the trailer, it's like, that looks like it could be at least a fun watch. And maybe it's not the best horror movie ever, but it looks like at least it might be fun considering, you know, Malcolm McDowell is in it as well. He plays the devil. And really, once you get into it, it loses all allure by the end of, or by about the middle of the second act, I would say. It just really starts, the lack of acting ability from these actors just kind of starts to grate on you, and you just don't really care anymore. Apparently there was a spin-off series from this. There was a single season called, again, not in the notes, so I can't remember, but there was a single season of a TV series that went to Amazon Prime as well. That is still up. You can go watch it. It continues the story of American Satan. I honestly didn't finish the movie because it was like, this is so many bad tropes. This is so many bad stereotypes about the record industry that really you can watch something that's music related that is a little bit more accurate, or at the very least a little bit more positive on the music industry. Not that the music industry is a great place, or really that, you know, it's not broken in a lot of ways, but it's like a lot of really played out stereotypes about Satan worship and all this stuff that, like, you've seen it done probably a dozen times before, and every one of those dozen times is probably done better than this. So I had no desire to finish watching the dang movie. So I'm telling you now, probably steer clear of it. But if you do happen to watch it and maybe you like it better than I do, then there's going to be a little bit more, because there is a spin-off series where all of the actors return to reprise their roles for the series. So at least there's that. And there was talk of a second season for the series too, but that never came around because I believe COVID. So, and that, nerds, is what happened this week for me. Going forward from here, no plans, honestly. It's Halloween time, so we're going to be watching a whole bunch of Halloween movies. Whether or not they are new Halloween movies remains to be seen, or previously unseen by me movies very much remains to be seen. So don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of stuff for That Just Happened in the weeks to come. And then we've got, we're going to do the off season. And off season means no That Just Happened show. So we'll try and cover that in the main episodes here and there, but I don't know. I can't guarantee anything. No concerts this week, so no live music. I think there might be something else that I'm not remembering. A TV show. Why am I drawing? I don't remember. Harley Quinn. I think I still have to finish the most recent season of Harley Quinn, so we'll probably be talking about that next week as well. And then just the regulars, Ahsoka and Walking Dead, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to for what's happening this week. What just happened for you over the course of the last week or so? Let's talk about that. What did you think of whatever movies you went and saw? What are you planning on seeing in the week to come? Let's talk about that as well, because definitely intrigued for some suggestions on things that we can have conversation about. So all of that being said, I appreciate your faces, nerds. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here, and that just happened.